I took my annual trip to Pinedo, Indiana to talk with Bob Prible, who is outstanding in his field, and I am standing out in his field with him. We're talking about Bob's test plot. Bob, great looking test plot again this year. How many seed varieties did you plant this year?
Oh, I don't put this in stone, but probably 25 bean varieties, 25 corn varieties, somewhere along that, 25 to 30.
There's some pretty good looking stuff. Exclusively Beck's hybrids here. Probably a great marriage, it would seem to me, because you're dealing with our soils, they're dealing with our soils.
Yeah, we both have our same philosophy. We both put our customers first. We both believe in, testing things locally and having the right varieties locally here for our farmers. And that's just their philosophy, just like ours.
I always ask you this, it seems every year, and that is we get out here and we're looking at some really good looking corn stand. And is there anything that really surprised you, really jumped out, surprised like over expectations?
I don't know if there's anything over expectations. Our 5794 is just a stud again this year, like it always is.
Yeah, you've been talking about that for a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's just a really unique hybrid. Big corporations, big companies don't have it just because it's super tough to produce in seed fields. So it's just not worth it for them to deal with it. Again, back to our Beck's partnership, it's just something that they can do that big corporations don't want to mess with. And it takes a lot of work in the seed fields and a lot of money to grow it. But it is worth it. It's a stud hybrid.
5794 on the corn. And is one of the reasons why it's so good, so popular, because it works good in a lot of different soil conditions?
It does, but only in a small area. So that's, again, goes back to us and Beck's. We're right here in our area. It's super. You get real far over in Ohio, it starts backing down. You get too far towards Illinois, it's not the hybrid that it is here. But here, it's just amazing.
Talk about the conditions this year, because kind of interesting, there was a point at which we were not worried about tar spot. And then all of a sudden we were talking tar spot. Pro Farmer Crop Tour even mentioned it, that they got into west central Indiana. They found a bunch of tar spot. How bad would you say the pressure was right here in our region?
Really didn't see much of it, and we still aren't seeing much of it, actually. I hear Adams County has got some issues with it, maybe, but most of it here we're just starting to see, and the corn is far enough along now. Really not going to be an issue for yield. Going to be an issue for standability, possibly. So keep an eye on your hybrids. If you see something that's got it in a bad situation, a lot of it, just maybe put that on your radar and harvest that farm first, But otherwise, I don't think it's going to be a real yield robber for us this year.
I think we're at a point where farmers are looking at it and they're saying, am I going to get a return on investment if I go out and spray this thing, or are we far enough along that probably a non-issue?
It's probably not an issue. And the other thing we got to be careful of, there's a lot of people who like to sell chemicals. I had a guy the other day told me, I got tar spot really bad. I said, well, I need to get out and look at it. So I got pictures of her here on my phone, and he showed it to me, and he had gray leaf spot. But he said an agronomist from the chemical company told him he needs to be out there spraying that field. So we want to spend every dime on every acre we can to get every dollar back. But I am really in the court of, hey, let's go look and see if you have the problem before we just go out there and blanket spray every acre of ground for whatever it is that we think we're spraying for.
Should always start with good diagnosis. How about soybeans? Anything surprise you?
No big surprises. We have 3650s this year. It's an E3 bean that it's going to be super good. But, last year in our plot, again, we talk about all the testing we do. Wow, that and 2950s were just crazy good, and they look really good this year in the field. 3140 is one of our good stress type beans, and that looks really good on some rough farms this year. So, not really any big surprises, but some of that new stuff that we picked out last year when we were doing that testing, we brought it into actual fields this year, and it looks like they were good choices.
Weather-wise, interesting year this year. I think we started out in the spring thinking, we're going to have some issues here. And then all of a sudden, well, I don't know, it's looking awfully good. But to a point that you and I have spoken about in the past is that some guys had waited so long, and we had such great soil moisture this year. There was a concern that some of these guys got over anxious, or maybe, they waited too long or whatever, and caused some real compaction issues. Have you seen a lot of that, to the extent that we're going to have this issue for a while?
I don't think it's any long-lasting thing, but I think there's a lot of tracks that, if you had an airplane and you were looking at the field, you definitely could see, that must be my planter tracks, or, my pattern across the field. So there's definitely some issues, and, you can walk across these fields and you're outside of your planter where there wasn't any tires. A lot of those rows in those wet areas definitely look better than where your tire tracks ran on your tractor. But, we had to commit sins this year, or you never planted. So you always want to try to wait for it to be right, but sometimes everything but 10% is right, and you just have to do it. So just plan on those 10%, maybe have some issues with a little compaction, or not quite what you want them to be.
probably a sore spot for you, but you got an awful lot of inventory out here in terms of equipment. Some really good looking grain wagons. Care to talk about that, or is that something we're not talking about?
Well, we had a lot of stuff ordered here, kind of still part of the COVID thing. We waited 18 months for some of it to come in. So a lot of stuff, seed tenders were supposed to be here in April and in March, and they came in June and July. Of course, nobody wants a seed tender in July. So I'll tell you what, if anybody comes down here and makes me a good offer on anything, I'm going to sell it to them.
Okay, that was a good positive spin on that. Bob Prible, it's always wonderful to come down and take a look at the plot with you and walk through it and stuff. Yeah, nice crowd in there too.
Always appreciate you, Rob. Thanks for coming down.
Podcasts by Federated Media.